Hi, welcome to 81 Months of the Dao De Jing. This is my third attempt to make the third video in this Chapter 3 series, which is going to be the last one before we move on to Chapter 4. Okay, I kind of got sidetracked in the last couple attempts, so I'm going to make this one short and easy. Wei Wu Wei, acting without action, is basically the structure of non-action in the Dao De Jing. Non-action in the Dao De Jing is never a dead entity, right? Non-action in the Dao De Jing never means only not acting. Non-action always leads to something, right? And so if you compare chapter 2, which is the first place where non-action is mentioned, it says wu wei zhi shi, the activity of non-action. If you look at chapter 3, it says wei wu wei, acting without action. Well, both of them imply an activity, right? So sure in Chinese, right? It means something that is happening or something that somebody is doing, right? Or even something that somebody is feeling or thinking under certain terms, right? So if you were to talk to people in any modern Chinese city today, if they say to you "什么事儿," right, "什么事," then in that case they're saying like what's wrong? What are you doing? What are you thinking? Right? What's the deal? Right? So wu wei zhi shi, right, is it means that activity of non-action, right? This is the activity you choose to undertake. And it's relative to wan wu, zuo yan, er bu ci, right? The myriad beings keep going and they never say goodbye, right? They never stop. And so in that context, it means you are in a position to observe the activity of nature and you can understand nature better from that perspective. And so your practice of wu wei, non-action, is relative to what's transpiring in nature. So that's chapter 2. Chapter 3, wei wu wei, acting without action. The meaning here is relative to chang shi min, wu zhi wu yu, right? Always make the people without knowledge and without desire. So in other words, you're observing human affairs and you're not giving too much information, right? If you're the sage ruler of the small country or the large country, right? You're not spilling the beans about what's going on in government. You're not asking people to go get you expensive pearls and jade, right? You're allowing people to undertake their activities, but you can observe them. And then, right, wei wu wei, acting without action, ze wu bu zhi, nothing is left unregulated. In other words, the people are happy to regulate themselves if you don't force them to do things that will make them perverse. But at the same time, it also makes your job as an administrator much, much easier because the people are not coming to you and, fighting with each other about who's the best expert, or they're not trying to, steal from each other in order to bring you wealth, right? It's basically just saying, look, here's how you act as a good administrator. You don't get too much of your own personal motivation mixed up with the motivations of the people, and then the people will be happy to farm their crops and make their food, and you'll get a cut because you protect them with your military, right? So in the end everybody's happy, okay, approximately, right? I mean, this is a very general explanation. um but then at the same time, this concept of acting without action and non-action, etc., they're also interpreted variously by different Taoist traditions. So I'll tell you the internal alchemy version. The Taoist religious version is very, very similar, but I'm more knowledgeable about internal alchemy. So in internal alchemy, there's a small taxonomy of non-action. The taxonomy is like this: Yo Wei means to take action, Wu Wei means non-action, Wei Wu Wei means acting without action, and Wu Bu Wei means nothing is not acted upon, or it means everything is acted on, right? So in that regard, the Dao De Jing doesn't tell you to do Yo Wei. It doesn't tell you to take action. But internal alchemy requires that you focus the mind somewhere, right? So the mind is focused on the breath somewhere in the body. And so that's called Yo Wei, taking action. When the mind becomes calm and enters into a very peaceful meditation state, that's called Wu Wei, non-action, right? There's no action, there's no intention, right? The mind is at rest. And then when the energy, when the qi and the awareness, they start to spontaneously take care of themselves when you're in the deep meditation state, that's called wei wu wei, acting without action. And then finally, when the awareness becomes illuminated, right, and the sensation of the qi moves, this can be called wu bu wei, everything is acted upon or nothing is not acted upon, right? So it's a taxonomy that occurs every time that you practice successfully. And then generally it moves in that direction too, right? So at the beginning, there's a lot more yo wei, there's a lot more taking action in order to get the mind stabilized in the body. But then later on, right, the practice is more wu wei. You can sit without having anything, without any strong intention. And then ultimately, um, the action, it happens naturally. And then later, right, it just becomes totally spontaneous. And so every time you practice, you can apply this taxonomy, but then also, you know, over the course of many years, it will also sort of be the way that you regard practice in general, right? It moves more toward the spontaneous ability to generate energy and generate awareness over time. So generally speaking, these are the these are the main modes of non-action that I'm the most familiar with, right? There's the Dao De Jing philosophical perspective, and which is related to nature and related to government. There's the meditation perspective. Of course, there's other ones too. You can find a myriad of ways to apply acting without action in your life, right? But these things are your personal insights that you have to come to through an attempt to apply Taoist philosophy within your own life, right? So that's not for me to tell you, that's for you to figure out by yourself. Um, but I hope that this video was helpful. Nice short video. I haven't said anything which I feel that I will regret later. So I wish you a good day, and I'll see you next week with the first entry for chapter 4.